Dennis,
Mm-hmm.
thank you very, very much for agreeing to this interview for Caribbean Labour Solidarity. If I may introduce you, you are Dennis Bovell, sound operator, arranger, lyricist, originator of the UK Lovers Rock, founder member of Matumbi, and one of the foremost composers in the United Kingdom at the moment. And latterly, you made a cameo appearance on Steve McQueen's Lovers Rock. What more can you add?
I would say that I've been a producer for quite a lot of acts in the reggae field, as well as in the pop field. My longtime friend, Linton Kwesi Johnson, I've been accompanying him on all his albums. Also, I've worked with groups like Boomtown Rats with Bob Geldof, or Edwin Collins' Orange Juice, or the first female punk band to make a record in the UK, a group called The Slits, and another punk band called The Pop Group, as well as having worked with Janet Kay and taught her the song Silly Games.
That was the song that was highlighted on Lovers Rock.
Correct.
Fantastic tune.
Thank you.
Okay. How did you get into music?
Well, I'm the grandson of a Seventh-day Adventist minister, lay preacher. He was also a carpenter, my grandfather, and a musician, a man who taught all his children music, who taught the church choir music. And my mum is his eldest daughter. So when he used to do choir practice at church, Mom would be his second in command, because she also reads music, and she would take over sometimes, with the direction of the choir. And when I came along as his first grandchild, I accompanied Mom and Granddad to choir practice quite often, and I enjoyed it. I looked forward to choir practice during the week, because I wasn't allowed in the choir, but my ears were open, and I was kind of taking in what Mom and Granddad were, hoping to achieve with the church choir. And then when they did recitals, it was, phenomenal. They would go around the island singing in other churches. Also, my mom's brothers had a quartet, and they sang on Rediffusion, on religious programs, and were quite known. So for me, music was everywhere, and something that my whole family enjoyed. So when my mom's younger brother, Uncle Sam, decided he was going to branch out from being a spiritual musician to become what my granddad would call a worldly musician, which meant that he played with bands. He played bass guitar with one band. He played rhythm guitar with another band, and he was playing in much to the dislike of his dad. In fact, he ended up leaving the island and going to set up home in Canada.
Now, the strange thing is, it may be strange to some, is that you were born in Barbados.
Correct.
Yet you are one of the top-ranking reggae producers worldwide.
Well, the thing is that Jackie Opel was from Barbados, and he was the lead singer of that group called the Scatterlights. There have been lots of people non-Jamaican who have gone into reggae and made their home there. And I'm one of those people because before I came to London, two of my uncles had set sail for Jamaica to study at the University of the West Indies. This was in the 60s. So when they came back at summer break or Christmas break or whatever break, they would come with Jamaican music in tow, which had to be hidden so that the old people didn't hear it and could only be played when the old people weren't at home. And I started to get into ska and Prince Buster and Derek Morgan and all that since I was a young lad. And when I came to London, it was more accessible because my father was not particularly religious. And he had a little sound system. This sound system was called Tropical Soundmaster. And we lived in Battersea. And occasionally we'd have Blues Dogs house parties in our house where members of Dad's work colleagues who were London Transport would come over, and some of Mum's work colleagues who were NHS nurses would come over and mingle. And in fact, in those years, I attended a whole host of weddings and, christenings. They were a regular happening at that time,
Okay, this brings me to my next question. For us fuddy-duddies, for us older people, what is a sound system? Or what was a sound system, and what is a sound clash?
Well, a sound system is a system capable of producing sound. I mean, reproducing sound. In Jamaica, they took it a little bit further than just a stereo, and they would build huge, massive wardrobe-like cabinets housing speakers and making the floor rumble. They were also specific loudspeakers that gave you better quality of certain frequencies. Like in West Norwood, there was a speaker manufacturer called Tannoy. And Tannoy were a favorite amongst people having sound systems because the quality of the sound that they emitted was phenomenal, and it added color to the sound. And anyone who had a sound system was obviously interested in reproducing quality sound because people didn't go to have their ears blasted off. People would have to have quality sound. I mean, it got worse as it went on, but and these sound systems would then be our entertainment systems because the owners of the sound systems would acquire all the records from Jamaica, from America, from Africa, from Ghana, from Nigeria. And because at certain times you would have to pop on James Brown, or at other times you'd have to play Fela Kuti, depending on what your audience wanted. And quite a lot of the people that worked for London Transport and the NHS were from all over the world.
Okay, and sound clash.
Now, a sound clash is the term given to a kind of competition in sound, mainly to see whose amplification is the most mellow and who has the widest selection of records, of brand new records, and then there would be a competition. And in the 60s, the place famous for that, to have this sound clash, was a place in Battersea called Pountney Hall, and it was off Lavender Hill there. And the big four sound systems would congregate there to have a playoff against each other, and they would be Sir Coxsone, Duke Reid, Neville the Enchanter, Count Shelley from the north. Those were the four that were constantly battling to see who was the champion sound.
Okay, so what happened when there was a sound clash in the Carib Club, Cricklewood, on October the 11th, 1974?
Well, in this sound clash, it was a three-way spin out, which means that there were three sound systems vying for the number one spot, or vying for the audience reaction to proclaim them the top sound of the evening. One sound was a sound called Count Nick's. Another sound was a sound called Lord Coos. And then the third sound was Sufferer. Now, I was the controller of Sufferer. I put the records on, you know, and I was the selector. And that night, all of a sudden, at the point where I'm playing a record that was given to me by Lee Scratch Perry. Lee Scratch Perry was standing right next to me, okay? Now, this clash had a funny spin out because Lord Coos was also a friend of Bunny Lee, the famous Jamaican record producer. And Bunny Lee and Lee Perry were known opponents of each other, you know, kind of in the music world. They had spin-offs, the biggest of sound classes. So Lord Coos had armed himself with all of the Bunny Lee cuts, because Bunny Lee was just around in London at that time for the promotion of Johnny Clark. Johnny Clark had a song called Move Out of Babylon, and Bunny Lee had produced that. And Johnny Clark was about to embark on his first British tour, live tour, and his backing band was none other than my band, Matumbi. So I had an in to Bunny Lee, and of course he knew that I had the sound system connection, and he had given me, you know, some of his dub plates. Lord Coos had all of those, but what he didn't have was the dub plates that Lee Perry had brought to London that day. Now, an old friend, Larry Lawrence, went to Heathrow Airport, picked up Lee Perry, and brought him to Sufferer's Camp, because we didn't want him to sell his dub plates to Lord Coos before we had to go playing them on Lord Coos. And we knew, of course, that he would, in the course of time, sell his dub plates to, you know, whoever had money. Because, I mean, those guys were making records to sell, and the dub plates were just advertising what's to come. You know, it was kind of like pre-release, you know. So Bunny Lee had his dub plates, and I had Bunny Lee's dub plates, and then Lee Perry came. And then Lee Perry had brought me a special dub plate, a tune with Vin Gordon playing trombone. Now that tune is now known as The Real Rock, but this version started off like a rag tune, you know, before it went into boom, heavy dub. And at the point where the music changed from the rag, you know, rag dance ball to dub reggae, the audience were ecstatic. The audience reached peak, like, yeah! And at that time, I knew I had won the clash. But at the same time, there was some police in the audience taking out a prisoner. That coincided with whoever his friends were deciding to free him from that. And that happened. Then the police ran outside, I thought. And I found out later that what had happened was that they had run into the ladies' toilet and were radioing for assistance. Now, I had no idea of this until the trial, because what happened was the next morning after all that happened, my friends were saying to me, hey, do you know what? The police are looking for you. And I was like, why? So I went to Golders Green Police Station to see what it was they wanted. And they said to me, yeah, we were told that you on the microphone said something, and then the whole crowd turned on the police. I was like, yeah, what did I say? You know, we don't know, but, you know, everybody's saying that you incited the crowd against the police, which was totally untrue.
Now, I'm asking you this question. I mean, you've explained, but did you goad the police?
Yes, I went to the police station.
No, I said, did you goad?
Did I goad? Oh,
Yeah.
not at all. That would have been a stupid thing to do. In fact, they came and gave evidence and said that I stood on the stage like some revolutionary with a microphone in my hand saying, get the boys in blue. I thought, now how weird is that? I would be talking to a lot of black people, get the boys in blue. That is a Cockney term. And that was put there by them.
You were tried along with others who were arrested at the club at the Central Criminal Court, the Old Bailey.
Yes.
What were you charged with?
I was charged with causing an affray. It wasn't alleged that I hit anybody or did it. They said that I stirred up the thing, I caused this affray. Up until then, I didn't know what the word affray meant. They accused me of that, stirring it up, which was completely untrue. And I was flabbergasted to find police officers perjuring themselves and trying to secure a conviction. The trials, there were 2 trials. The first trial lasted 6 months. Can you imagine going to the Old Bailey every day from 10 till 4? There was little chance of working. So 6 months of
Hold
that.
on.
And at the end of that trial, 9 people were acquitted, to show you how farcical it was. 9 people were acquitted, and 3 people had what we call a hung jury. And I happened to be one of them 3. And so instead of, as I protested, a man is supposed to be innocent until he's found guilty, I hadn't been found guilty, so therefore my innocence should have been presumed. But they moved the goalposts and said they were going to retry the 3 people who had had a hung jury. I never heard of that before in the history of the courts, but they said they could do it. And then a second trial ensued, and that trial was trial of 3 people. At the end of that trial, one of us was acquitted. And ironically, the guy who was acquitted was the guy who posted my bail when I was first charged with this causing an affray, so that I would lose my surety. They went to his house, kicked the door down, arrested him, and charged him with hitting a policeman in the face with a bottle, which was completely untrue. But because he was the only witness to say, to give evidence on my behalf, I think what they decided, right, let's make him as well, so that it would throw the weight off of this man's evidence, because this was the guy who, once the pushing and shoving had started, who was desperately trying to get our sound system back up and running, right? But at that time, there were other sound systems in the room and on their microphones. When asked by the judge about that, I said, well, for all I know, it could have been a talking record. And the judge looked at me and said, do you expect me to believe that people talk on record? Well, he obviously never heard of you, Roy, or I, Roy, or Big U, or Prince Jasbo, or any of them lot, like, who actually talk on record. Prince Buster talks on record. And I tried to say that to him, and he thought, you're lying. Nobody talks on record. I mean, what about Jay-Z now?
Well, how long did the second trial last?
The second trial lasted for 3 months. So in total, I was on trial for 9 months over this. At the end of the second
for
trial,
12, wouldn't that be 12 months? 9 months
no,
and 3
6 and
months.
3.
Oh, 6. Oh, beg your pardon. Yes. Yeah.
6 and 3, 9 months. At the end of the second trial, the jury went to deliberate, and by 9 o'clock at night, they hadn't come back with a verdict. And the judge called us in and said, look, if they're not back by 10 o'clock, I'm throwing this whole thing out, and that's going to be the end of it. At 5 to 10, they come back and say, 9 of us think Dennis Bovell was guilty. And that was the majority in the judgment. Right, I'm taking that. There's more than 6, more than half, right? So 3 people had still believed in my innocence up until then. And so that gave me grounds for appeal. I appealed and was set free by the Central Criminal Courts and had my sentence quashed and my conviction squashed.
Okay. What was the effect of your trial on
Well,
the
it
Caribbean?
certainly made me distrust the police. Up until then, I was one of these people that would say to someone who'd said that they'd been fitted up by the police, okay, come on, you could tell me, did you really do it? You know, and quite a lot of people in that time are going, no, they fitted me up, they fitted me up. It wasn't until it happened to me that I was, you know, aware how easily it could be done. I mean, they put me in a lineup, right, an ID parade, looking for a man with a beard, and I was the only one in the parade with a beard. None of the police officers picked me out, except the 2 last. It was as though all the innocent ones who thought they could have recognized someone were sent. They didn't recognize anyone. Then the 2 who were going to nail me to say, yeah, we saw him, all the lights were on, and he was on the stage. I was nowhere on that stage. I never went on the stage at all, right? He was on the stage with the microphone in his hand saying, get the boys in blue.
But the effect, I mean, for me, your trial was so important because as a schoolboy, it gave me a degree of confidence to know that the system could be beaten. What was your observation of
but the system is a fraud. The system is flawed. The system is full of prejudice. You know, in fact, I was invited to give a name of anyone, for instance, so that the police could follow the lead of that person. And it didn't, it could be someone I didn't much care for. And I said, you're asking me to grass on an innocent person, you know, to say it was so-and-so or whoever it was. But I couldn't do that. I mean, it's like, where do I go after I say it was someone and go to the witness stand and point them out as well? You know, it was unheard of. But the thing was, if there was anyone making any noise on the microphone in that dance that night, it wasn't me.
Okay. Do you think things have changed in respect of Black art and culture in the United Kingdom? Do you think that
Black art and culture has changed slightly because what they do is they give you an opportunity. They set you up to fail. They give you an opportunity, and when you fail, they go, see, I told you it wasn't going to work. And that's been the case of many youth structured places up and down the whole UK who have been underfunded, so they fail, you know, who have been undermined, so they fail, or who have been under-assisted, so they fail.
But we now see a lot of Black faces on TV. We've got Michaela Cole, both writing and acting. We've got numerous actors on TV adverts. We've got Black music playing a key role in British pop culture. Don't you think we've advanced in terms of our art and culture?
Yes, we've advanced, but not nearly far enough, because even though some of us are advancing, they're still holding back the majority of us because they don't want to see us unite, in the words of Bob Marley.
Mm-hmm. Well, you used a word which I found telling when you say this. You said that you felt that the police in that period of 1974 were engaged in an action which would result in cultural fatigue. What do you mean by that?
Well, they were trying to culturally fatigue us, to say, look, you're not Black, you know, you're colored, okay? And if you, persist in having Black organizations, we're gonna disband them, until they had this Commission for Racial Equality, and it was anything but. They tried to dissuade people from recognizing their Africanity, or from congregating in their Africanity unless they were worshiping their Bible, you know, the King James Version. If you were going to church and starting a new church, look at how many churches there are nowadays, right? They applaud that, yeah, because we're praying to the God that is going to save us, who ain't come yet, but in all the Bibles, that God is a white God, right? And so we're praying to that God, and our parents are telling us, yeah, you got to love this character who is kind of an impossibility when you think about how he came and all the things he did and how he's revered and how you know, he's coming back. So you better be good. And slavery wasn't a crime. So don't you take any revenge on that, because vengeance is mine, saith the Lord.
Yes, but are you saying that that was the cause of the police action at the Carib Club in Cricklewood?
I think
the
cause of the police action was to teach those people a lesson who dared to free a prisoner from the police. And it should be noted that in all this commotion, the original suspect was never brought to court or found. It beggars belief whether he existed at all.
Well, that is a bit strange, because the narrative is that he ran from his car and ran into the club. Well, you would have
Which is a bit impossible, because he would have had to have jumped the queue. He would have not only had annoyed club goers, but he certainly wouldn't have been able to boozle his way past the doorman.
Okay.
And I'm sure if anyone was running in a suspicious mood, in a suspicious manner, into that club, the doorman would have prevented him from entering, especially if there were police hot on his heels.
Okay, well, that's a point. Now, in closing, could the art, sound system, reggae, other manifestations of Caribbean art and music be used both as a defense against oppression and as a weapon to fight oppression? If so, how?
Well,
Things seem to
as a defense against oppression, the songs that are regularly pumped out on these sound systems, right, are singing of peace and love and harmony. You know, they're not saying, let's go and kill anybody. They're saying, let's unite and come together as one and love each other. I mean, you know, but I'm sure, as I said before, that's not what they want. They want to divide us in order to rule us.
Okay. Well, Dennis, I know you're very, very busy. I'm very grateful on behalf of Caribbean Labour Solidarity for
My
this
pleasure.
interview. And hopefully one day you'll be able to attend our meetings and answer what I know will be hundreds of questions. And thank you for taking out time from your very, very busy schedule. And once again, thanks.
My pleasure.